What I am going to show you today will not make sense the first time you hear it. One powder. Two completely opposite jobs in the same garden at the same time. The same $5 bag that kills every weed pushing up through your garden path this morning is the exact mineral your tomato plant 10 feet away has been starving for underground while you watched it slowly turn yellow and fail to set fruit. Not two products, one product, doing opposite work in opposite places in the same garden. I know how that sounds. It sounds like something a man says to keep you watching. But the yellowing plant in this bed and the weed on that path are both telling you the same thing, that this mineral matters, and one of them has more of it than it can use while the other is desperate for what it cannot reach. The same bag that handles the weeds on your path is the answer to what is failing 10 feet away, mixed differently and used for an entirely different purpose. I am not going to name it yet, because if you go out and use it in the wrong place at the wrong concentration, you will damage the very plants you are trying to rescue. So stay with me. My name is Elias. I am Amish, and I have kept a kitchen garden, a bean and tomato row, and a small orchard on this Lancaster County place my whole life. The powder I am about to show you has been used on this property for both of these purposes longer than I have been farming it. My grandfather reached for the same bag for the same two reasons, and he learned it the same way I learned it, by watching what happened and remembering the result. It is called ferrous sulfate. Iron sulfate, if the label is being particular about it, a plain iron mineral available at any farm supply store or garden center for around $5 a bag, enough to last a full growing season for a kitchen garden of ordinary size. No special formulation, no branded version required. A plain white to pale green powder that has been in barns and tool sheds and garden sheds in this county since before anyone thought of selling the farmer a separate bottle for every separate problem. The garden companies have made two products for the two uses I am going to give you today. A $40 bottle of selective weed concentrate for the path and a $25 iron supplement spray for the tomato. Both of them are solving problems that a $5 bag of ferrous sulfate handles just as well. No money in that $5 bag for a company that runs a commercial every spring. So nobody runs the commercial, and another season passes where you buy two bottles when one bag would have done both jobs. Press the subscribe button now and the bell along with it. Every video here is built around the same plain truth, that the cheap answer is almost always already where you are, and it is almost never the one being advertised. The first job is the garden path, the gravel walk between your raised beds, the dirt path running between the tomato row and the bean row, the stepping path where crabgrass, spurge, and plantain push up between every stone or through every gap in the gravel by midsummer. Every one of those weeds is a broadleaf plant. Wide, flat leaves that take up liquid at the surface the way a cloth takes up water. Pour ferrous sulfate solution down the center of that path, and those leaves absorb iron at a concentration that overwhelms the plant's cells before it can use what it absorbed. The leaves turn dark and go black within 2 days, and the plants die. The gravel does not care, the stone does not care, and nothing you want to keep is growing in the middle of that path. This is where the method works cleanly and without reservation, because the weeds are there and nothing else is. Here is how to do it. Dissolve 1 cup of ferrous sulfate powder in 1 gallon of water and stir it until the water runs dark amber with nothing settled at the bottom. An uneven mix means uneven results. If you are making both solutions on the same day, label the containers before you mix anything. Path mix and rescue mix in unlabeled jugs sitting next to each other is how a plant dies. Pour it or spray it down the path on a dry morning when no rain is forecast for the next 24 hours. The solution needs time to sit on the leaf surface and be absorbed before it washes away, and a hard rain the same day turns the whole effort into a morning wasted. Apply it early or in the evening, never in midday heat when evaporation pulls it off the leaf before it can do anything. Walk slowly, coat the weeds well, and stay inside the path. Do not let the solution run into your beds. Within a day, the weeds will start going dark at the edges. By the second day, most of them will have gone black and begun to collapse. By the end of the week, the path will look like you spent a full afternoon pulling by hand, except you spent 20 minutes with a watering can. Annual path weeds handled with one application typically do not push new growth back up because the plant is finished at the soil line. Perennial weeds with deep established roots may send up new growth from below 2 or 3 weeks later and need a second pass. The first application will show you quickly which you are dealing with. If your garden path sits in shade for part of the day, or you have flagstone under a fruit tree where the sun never fully dries the stone, you likely have moss as well as weeds. Ferrous sulfate handles moss the same way and faster, often within a few hours. Pour the same path mixture over the mossy stone, let it dry, and the moss will be gone before the week is out. One pass handles both the weeds and the moss in the same morning. Now here is the caution that makes the whole thing make sense, because it is also the explanation for why the same mineral does two completely opposite things in the same garden. The concentration is everything, and I want you to hold these two numbers in your head because mixing them up will cost you a tomato plant. Path concentration. 1 cup of ferrous sulfate per 1 gallon of water. That is 16 tablespoons. At that strength, the solution runs very dark, almost the color of strong tea, and it kills every broadleaf plant it coats. Do not let it touch your vegetable leaves at this strength, not even a splash. A drop on a tomato leaf at this concentration will leave a burn mark by morning. Rescue concentration, 2 tablespoons of ferrous sulfate per 1 gallon of water. That is 1/8 of the path strength. The solution runs a pale amber, much lighter than the path mix. At this strength, it feeds the plant. It does not harm it. If you hold the two mixed solutions side by side in clear jars, you will see the difference immediately. The path mix is deep and dark. The rescue mix is nearly clear with a faint color. If your rescue mix looks as dark as the path mix, you have added too much and you need to dilute it before it goes anywhere near a plant. Same mineral, same bag. 8 times the difference in how much. Do not use path concentration on your vegetable beds. The mineral is not the problem. The measure is the whole thing. And that second job, the rescue, is where the same bag goes to work on the opposite problem at a fraction of the strength. Walk into the garden on any morning in midsummer and look at your tomato leaves. Not the color of the plant overall, but the color of individual leaves. If a leaf has gone pale and yellowish while the veins running through it stayed green, the leaf looks like a skeleton of itself, pale flesh with green ribs showing through. That plant is not short of water. It is not short of nitrogen. It is short of iron. Something is keeping the iron from reaching the roots in the concentration the plant needs to produce the chlorophyll that makes a healthy leaf its deep green. The veins stay green because they have their own supply. The leaf tissue between them cannot get what it needs. My grandfather could read this in a plant the way a man reads the weather. He would stop at a tomato stake in the morning, turn a leaf over once in his hand, hold it up to the light to see the veins clearly, and say the ground here is not giving it what it needs. He did not use the word iron. He was describing iron deficiency in the language of a man who had watched enough tomato rows to know what that particular yellowing meant and what came back when he corrected it. I asked him once what he looked for. He said the color that should be in the leaf stays in the veins when the ground has stopped feeding the rest of it. That is as exact a description of what that yellowing is as anything I have read since. Once you see that pattern, the yellow leaf with green veins, once you know what you are looking at, you will never confuse it with anything else, and you will never again spend a week watering a tomato harder trying to fix a problem that had nothing to do with water. When a plant is showing that pattern, dissolve 2 tablespoons of ferrous sulfate in 1 gallon of water. 2 tablespoons. Write it on the side of the jug if you have to. Not a heaping tablespoon, not 3 tablespoons because you want faster results. 2 level tablespoons per gallon. If the solution comes out darker than pale amber, pour half of it away and refill with water. The concentration that kills a weed on a path will burn a tomato leaf, and more is not more here. More is damage. This is a rescue application, and it wants to be gentle. Take that solution and spray it directly onto the affected leaves, tops and bottoms both, in the morning before the sun is high and hot. Do not water the plant for several hours afterward. The solution needs time to sit on the leaf surface and be absorbed through the tissue where the chlorophyll is failing. Within a week to 10 days, the new growth coming in at the top of the plant will be noticeably greener than the old pale growth that remains below. The iron has reached the plant and the plant can make chlorophyll again. 2 or 3 applications a week apart will bring most iron-deficient plants back through the season. Go back and look at the new growth at the top each time. If it is coming in green, the plant is responding. If it is still pale after 2 applications, the soil is likely too alkaline, and when soil goes alkaline, the iron already in the ground gets locked up where the roots cannot reach it. Adding more iron will not fix that. I explain how to bring the ground back into range in an earlier video in this series, and that is the answer in that case, not more iron. This works on tomatoes, on beans that have gone thin and pale in the middle of summer, on basil that has lost its deep green by August, on beet tops fading out of their color before the roots are ready, and on fruit trees in the orchard that have put out a weak, pale flush of growth in spring when they should be full and dark. I have used the foliar spray on the apple and pear trees here when they came out of winter, looking more yellow than green on the new growth. An orchard tree responds more slowly than a tomato plant because the distance from leaf to root is longer and the plant is bigger. But by the 2nd or 3rd week after the first application, you will see the difference in the new leaves coming in at the tips. Any plant showing that yellowing pattern with green veins across its leaves is a plant asking for exactly what this solution carries. One thing I want to say plainly, because the honest version of this is more useful than the hopeful one. Iron deficiency in vegetable plants almost always comes from one of 2 places. Either the soil genuinely lacks iron, which is less common than most people assume, or the soil pH has crept too high and the iron already in the ground has been chemically locked up where the roots cannot reach it. When soil pH goes above about 7, iron stops being available to plants even when the soil contains plenty of it. If your iron deficiency comes back every season regardless of how much ferrous sulfate you add, the iron application is not solving the problem. It is putting a bandage on something that needs a different kind of attention. The real answer is bringing the pH back into range where the iron already in your soil can be used. I covered how to do that with wood ash and baking soda in an earlier video in this series. If the deficiency is a single season thing in a particular plant or a particular bed, the foliar spray is the direct answer, and it works. I will tell you what this looked like the summer I had the worst tomato row I had seen in 20 years on this property. 8 plants, all started from the same seedlings, all in the same bed. The outside plants on both ends did well through July. The middle 4 turned a particular yellowish pale, leaves losing color while the veins stayed visible, looking like the color had been pulled out of them. I checked the water, I checked for disease, I checked whether something had gotten into that section of the bed. Esther looked at the row one evening and said the ground just looks tired right there in the middle. She was not diagnosing iron deficiency. She was reading the plants the way she had learned to read them, but she was describing it. That section had been planted hard 2 years running with crops that eat heavily, and the ground had been gradually used up, the pH drifting too far toward alkaline without my noticing. I sprayed the 4 affected plants with ferrous sulfate at the foliar rate on a Thursday morning and again the following Thursday. By the end of the 2nd week, the new growth at the top of those 4 plants was full and green, while the old pale leaves remained where they were. The plants made it through to September. Lighter than the outside plants, but a proper tomato harvest from all 8 rows. The ferrous sulfate did not fix the soil that season, but it kept 4 plants producing through the rest of the season while I corrected the pH going into fall. One more honest word. Ferrous sulfate lowers soil pH slightly with each application. For most garden vegetables, a slightly more acidic soil is not a problem and may even be welcome, since tomatoes and beans prefer conditions just below neutral. But if your soil is already on the acidic side, below 6 on the scale, repeated ferrous sulfate applications can push it further in that direction. Test your pH before you start a regular program of foliar iron sprays and keep an eye on it through the season. 2 or 3 applications to rescue an iron-deficient plant through one summer will not shift the ground's pH noticeably. A long habit of weekly sprays across every bed is a different thing. And before you start, ferrous sulfate stains everything. It touches a rust orange that sets quickly on stone, concrete, and fabric. Rinse any accidental splash on hard surfaces within seconds, not minutes. Wear old clothes. Keep gloves on through the whole application. Keep children and animals off the treated path until the solution has dried, which takes 2 or 3 hours in ordinary weather. This week, walk your garden paths and count the broadleaf weeds coming up through the gravel or between the stones. Mix 1 cup per gallon and pour it down the path on the next dry morning. Then walk your tomato and bean rows the same morning and look at the leaves one by one for that particular yellow with green veins showing through. Do this walk early while the dew is still on and the light is coming in low, because morning light shows that pattern better than afternoon light that washes everything into the same color. If you find it, mix 2 tablespoons per gallon and spray those plants that same week. Come back 10 days later and look at the new growth at the top. That is where the answer will show. 2 concentrations, 2 different jobs, 1 $5 bag. Tell me in the comments what the worst weed on your garden path is right now, and whether you have seen that yellow veined pattern on any of your tomatoes or beans this season. If you have, now you know what it was. I read every comment and I will tell you which of these 2 uses fits what you are looking at. Next time, the one change in how most people water that makes iron deficiency and several other garden problems worse by the end of every summer, and how to correct it in a single afternoon without buying anything. Subscribe here so you do not miss it. Stay patient, stay curious, and remember, the mineral doing 2 opposite jobs in your garden this morning has been under the garden shed floor for longer than this county has had a name for it.